Today we're talking about this lady, sort of. You might recognize her, especially if you've done a first aid course. Her face was the basis of the CPR dummies that we still have today. There is much mystery surrounding who she was when she was alive, but how she came to be the face we know so well today is a morbid look down her historic road. Please like and subscribe if you find this video interesting. Your support is much appreciated. Now let's talk the face of CPR. The 1800s Paris was a fascinating time with much change and construction. It was the centre of the art world and the intellectual nerve centre of the Impressionism movement. And this is where our story starts. In the autumn of 1880, a young woman's body was fished out of the Seine River. Her body showed no signs of trauma, and she was taken to the Paris morgue, where all unknown bodies went at the time. Like so many other unclaimed bodies before her, she was laid out behind viewing glass in the hopes that someone would come and identify her. Remember, DNA wasn't available yet. Fingerprints had only just started being used and there was no database, and she didn't have any identification on her. Days passed and she still remained unidentified. Now, in the retelling of this tale, a lot of it has been romanticised. The fact that there was no trauma to her body made people theorise that she committed suicide by drowning over lost love. The practicalities make that quite unlikely. It is also said that the pathologist at the morgue was so taken by her beauty that he felt compelled to make a death mask of her face. This is also unlikely. Because what people forget is that it was very common in many morgues at the time to take plaster casts, or death masks as they were called, of faces of unclaimed bodies. Remember, this was a time when death was plentiful and space was not. A time when keeping a body unburied was seen as undignified to the deceased and sinful of the staff. And importantly, a time when proper refrigeration and preservation techniques were neither properly established nor wanted. With so many unclaimed bodies, they couldn't all be put out in the viewing rooms for long periods of time. There was just no room, and decomposition made identification even harder. So after a few days on display, death masks were made and hung up on the viewing room walls, and the body was buried, usually in a pauper's grave. Now, as we said in our Death as Entertainment video, the Paris morgue was not only a morgue and where bodies were identified, but unfortunately, somewhat of a tourist attraction for locals and foreigners alike. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of people would pass through every week to gawk at the unfortunate deceased. And this is also how thousands of people saw this young woman's death mask. They were taken in by her beauty and peaceful features. Indeed, models and actresses at the time started styling themselves after her look. Artists were fascinated and compared her to the Mona Lisa. And then, somewhere along the way, reproductions started to be made. It is assumed the first copy was made by moulding a cast over the original, likely having paid off a morgue worker to be able to do so. Soon enough, it was the height of fashion to own one of these reproduced death masks. Paris bohemians would hang them in pride of place in their homes. And soon the masks left France and were being hung up in all the trendy homes around Europe. And that brings us to the second half of the story. In 1958, American doctors James Delan and Peter Safar came together and agreed that mouth-to-mouth resuscitation should be taught to the masses. And they decided that using a life-size mannequin would be the best way to teach this technique. So after a bit of networking, they approached toy maker Asmund Leodahl to create a life-size mannequin upon which to teach the technique. It is believed that Leodahl's parents had one of these reproduced death masks in their home, and the toy maker decided to base the mannequin's face upon this. He believed, and probably quite rightly for the time, that men would not want to kiss another man's face, and that the general public were more likely to put in effort into saving a peaceful young woman, with a strong emphasis on the peaceful looking part, so as not to scare away those that the doctor was trying to teach. And thus, in the 1960s, the CPR mannequin went into mass production, and the face of that unclaimed woman from 1800s Paris lives on to this day. I do hope you have enjoyed this video and learned something new. Historical context is very important to stories such as these. And to know more, please go and watch our Death is Entertainment video, which I will link below. Thanks for watching. Now go talk death.